Good morning, everyone. This is Margie Heldring, welcoming you to our first program of the year 2022. We are so grateful and honored to have Mayor Bruce Harrell with us, and Devitta Briscoe and Winona, who will be introducing both of them in just a few moments. But I want to extend our thanks to all of you for joining us today. If you are a longtime or new member of Grandmothers, wonderful. We hope you've renewed for the year. If you are visiting for the first time, please join us. Please be a part of this very vibrant organization doing great work. I want to begin with a shout out for the good news that came from our Washington State legislative session this year, and perhaps Devitta will be talking more about that. I see a nod, so we agree. After many years of work, 6 years of work in particular, we were able to get a win, get passage on a ban on high capacity magazines, along with some restrictions on ghost guns and restrictions on armed intimidation. And this is due to, in large part, to the great advocacy of groups like Grandmothers and the Alliance and Ceasefire and Moms and all of our friends in the movement, and to the leadership of our state. So congratulations to everybody, and a particular salute to our legislative co-chairs, Suzanne Tripp and Jennifer Dolan Waldman, and the whole committee that organized our advocacy so well. So that is really good news, and we're going to have an excellent program today. And so I offer another shout out and thanks to our program chairs, co-chairs Jane Scriven and Maggie Carr, who have put this together. And before I get the great honor of introducing Winona, I want to just give a couple sentences about an overview of where the gun violence prevention movement, where the gun safety movement is in our country, as well as our state, as well as our city. It is an active movement compared to 10 years ago when we started. And there are two clearly distinct, divergent storylines in this movement at this point in time. One is the good news, the 2 steps forward, the passage of new laws, the activity in the legal system, the public awareness of this problem, steps communities are taking, investments in community violence interruption programs, increased and increasingly accurate media attention to the problem, helping us all know about its extent. These are positive steps. There's even a bill in the United States House of Representatives that I think will pass this spring, which is the child safety bill, the safe storage bill. That's the 2 steps forward part. There is, however, the other storyline, which is the 2 steps back part of the movement, of the landscape of this problem in our country, this epidemic. States that are promoting things like open carry, courts where there is a ruling against our work and our efforts, and for increased gun visibility and what some might call armed intimidation. Our pending concern about the Supreme Court ruling that will be coming up in June. So I say all this so we know where we stand. And where we stand is increasingly positive, strong, effective, and necessary. So thank you for being a part of that. I am delighted to introduce the moderator for today, our board member, our friend Winona Hollins Hauge. I've had a good time, wonderful time knowing her all these years. And then the last couple days, learning even more about her. And just very briefly, I want you all to know that when Winona was a student at Garfield High School, she and Carolyn Downs briefly joined the Black Panthers. And I am certain that that is where Winona caught the fever for her community service that has been a hallmark of her life since that time. She is such the embodiment of commitment to her communities and service to the institutions that serve our communities. The University of Washington, social work, public health, her church, Mount Zion, the Odessa Brown Clinic, the Fred Hutch Cancer Center, health chair for the Washington State Commission on African American Affairs, her radio station where she plays her beloved gospel music, the Central Area Senior Center, and now her recent appointment to Governor Inslee's Pandemic Task Force. And maybe coming in last but not least, Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, where she has been such a voice for diversity, for action, for community outreach. So Winona, thank you for your service to gun violence prevention, to grandmothers, and please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Marty Eldring. And thank you so much for that elaborate introduction. I'm humbled. I am excited about the opportunity today to bring to you our mayor, along with his cabinet member, Ms. Devitta Briscoe. It is my pleasure, my honor, and I do want to start by first and foremost giving you a little background on our mayor for those that might not know our mayor up close and personal. I thought it was very important to first of all acknowledge that he and I are both Garfield High School Bulldogs, so and alums of the University of Washington. But in his background, he was born and raised in the what we used to call the redlining district of the Central Area. He has grown up here, gone to Garfield High School, attended the University of Washington, is actually he was a scholar athlete and was actually inducted into the Pacific Northwest Hall of Fame for athletes out there at the University of Washington. He has served willingly as not only an experienced attorney in a private practice, but he's also worked in corporate as an attorney as well. In his background, he also has had an extensive stronghold on the community in terms of his civic relationships with the community. He's always been there, been a part of the community and advancing critical issues in our community, even before he came to the city council, was elected to the city council, then becoming president of the city council. And on top of that, has also served as an interim mayor for a short period of time before he was actually now the 57th mayor for the city of Seattle. We are in good hands this morning. We're pleased to know that he took out time in his schedule to join us to talk to us today about his vision for gun safety for our residents, for our children, for our grandchildren here. He has a beautiful wife who is in her own right a star, a shining star for this community in a leadership, in corporate leadership, as well as family leadership. They have 3 children and they have 2 grandchildren. So we should be talking to the First Lady about joining Grandmothers Against Gun Violence as we are extending that to Devitta. You look so young. I'm not sure if you have grandchildren too, but we'll find out more about that. But we remember today, part of the whole concept of bringing the community in today was to talk to all of you about why we need to keep our kids safe, make plans for the future for our grandkids. And with that said, at this time, I want to bring forward to you our mayor, Bruce Harrell. Thank you, Bruce Harrell.
Thank you, Winona, for that warm introduction. I'll share some thoughts with all of you fine folks, and I hope to be around to answer any questions you may have. I know Devitta will be speaking as well, and she'll be able to answer questions too. So a couple of thoughts. First of all, I think Margie framed it well, that while we are very proud of the work that you all have done as a city, advocacy, looking at the ban on high capacity, the ghost guns issues, just a great advocacy. We have to always be mindful of those who oppose the work that we're trying to do. I got to tell you that, you know, when I was a young person in the dinosaur ages, that I envisioned my grandmother and my grandfather, these old gray-haired people in rocking chairs. They always seemed so old to me. And now that I'm a grandpa and my kids call me Papa, and my beautiful wife is a grandmother, who they call Gra-Gra, I have a whole new appreciation for grandmothers. They are beautiful and vivacious. And so it's funny how your perspective changes when you get toward the 3rd and 4th quarter of your life. So thank you, because I think that all of you understand not only the the pain associated with gun violence, but the love that motivates you to do the work that you're doing. While we stand against gun violence, we stand for love and safety. And this is a unifying element, regardless as to your race or culture or religion, your political leanings. If you heard me say repeatedly, every chance that I get, that this is common blood that goes through our veins. And I spent countless hours working with mothers and fathers who've lost children, grandchildren, and so it will drive what we're trying to do. So let me talk a little bit about our vision. The first thing is that, well, I just want to share one other thing, that I welcome the St. Patrick's, the Ireland delegation here, some deputy mayors, some consul generals. They're all here this weekend for St. Patrick's Day. And they don't have a gun issue in the country because their police officers don't carry guns. And their culture in Ireland, they're not a member of NATO, and they have their President Higgins and their Prime Minister Michael Martin. They have a culture that they try to stay as peaceful as they can, and they never had the history of the history of a gun culture in their country, and they're very adamant on keeping it that way. We have a different hand, and I wanted to start with that context in our country, that we know that our country is flooded with guns. And I had to speak yesterday at a forum where I said, don't confuse my public safety strategy with my housing strategy, that I'm trying to get people off of sidewalks because I think it's inhumane for someone to live in a tent without heat and water, that I have to house them. But I also think it's inhumane to force people to walk in streets when a tent is in the middle of a sidewalk, forcing someone in a wheelchair to go a different way or go down here or uphill. I think that's inhumane as well. And my public safety strategy, while I'm leading with compassion and safety and love, I also have to protect people. And so embedded in the Harrell administration, I'm unambiguous about this. I'm unashamedly proud of the fact that I want to keep everyone safe. That under our state, I think many of you know RCW 941290 is one of the few states that prohibits cities from even doing anything that is reasonably restrictive of gun regulations or gun safety. An example would be under Mayor Nichols. Several mayors ago, we outlawed as a city guns in parks or public spaces. That then was legally challenged, and we lost because, again, the court ruled that under RCW 941290 that gun regulations is in the exclusive jurisdiction of the states. So while I'm so happy and proud, and we worked really hard with you on some of these gun safety laws, the high capacity issue and the ghost guns and some of the other things we in prior years that, by the way, grandmothers were just all over them. Their advocacy was beautiful. That as the mayor of the largest city in this state, and one of the in a city that the whole country is watching, I've had conversations with President Biden, Vice President Harris, Secretary of Housing Fudge, Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg, all of them about Seattle. They want to know our secret sauce here because they know on the one hand how well we've done with all of our great industries here. They also know we're struggling with some of the same issues that some of these other cities struggle with in terms of income inequality and violence and public safety. So they want to see what we're doing. But I'll share with you that my biggest push will be to get out from under that exemption. And I've talked to Devitta about that this is not small ball, this is big ball for us. And I'm going to push to have something on the ballot, because while I'm proud of what our state is going, they're moving too slow. I'll just throw it out there. They move too slow, that if I have to wait for legislatures in Spokane and Walla Walla and Ording and Timbuktu to keep governing what I have to do in the largest city in this state, I'll be too old before I get to the point where I think we need to get. And I think this needs to be on the ballot. So my ask is going to be that you study the laws in other states with me, and you see that I think it's the right thing to do is to put something on a statewide ballot. And quite frankly, we do not need another mass murder. We do not need another child killed. before we say, oh, because that always happens, right? That we see a mass murder at a theater or a school and gun safety, gun safety, gun safety. And then all of a sudden the far political right will then quash or squash what we're trying to do. And then we start all over again. And we don't need that. So there's a few things. I will invest heavily in community-based organizations. Make no mistake about that. Finding kids who are untreated with trauma, teaching young people to love their community and love themselves, looking at what policies can help people protect their own communities, leading with knowledge, letting people know the numbers that were put on the slideshow before, that this is killing our community, killing our loved ones. Yes, we will invest heavily in community-based organizations, but I'm going to suggest that that's still nibbling around the edges a little bit, because there are many things I would do as mayor, and I'll close with that. For example, I would allow my police officers to take a gun from someone if they are intoxicated. Okay? Simple as that. You take a driver's license away from someone if they're intoxicated. Why can't we take a gun away? Right now, we do not have that ability to do that in the city. I would be a little more stringent on the background checks to make sure that, again, that no one slips through the cracks. People could buy these guns on the internet, and I think that a city should be able to be a little more stringent. I would make sure training is more of a critical part in the process. I would actually limit the number of guns that a person could buy in 1 month. You can't tell me a person needs to buy 20 guns in 1 month. Okay, that's not, I don't think that's a safe practice for anyone. So there's very specific things I would do the certain laws I'd pass on a city without infringing upon someone's Second Amendment rights, and making sure our babies and our young adults and our elders and our grandmothers and grandfathers are safe. So I'm passionate about this in our administration. Devitta's story is remarkable, and I need someone as passionate about this work, working with me on this issue. And I look forward to being your strongest partner in the history of this city, Grandmothers Against Gun Violence. I look forward to being your strongest partner with my wife, with Gragra, my wife. So thank you for your work. Look forward to keeping our city safe. And when I talk about One Seattle, the reason I say that is I say that we have so much division going on, that if we start thinking about what we have in common, our love for keeping people safe, our love for our babies, our love for the next generation to do better than we did, that transcends political differences, race differences, culture differences. It transcends all of that. So we could disagree on strategies, or we could disagree on political outlooks. Then let's work hard to figure out how we could build a oneness in our city. And that's how we'll achieve the greatness that I see in this city, a city that I love so much. So thank you for having me, and I'll certainly stick around if you'll have me.
Yes. Thank you so much for that great presentation and for your vision. And there's a couple questions, one in particular that we wanted to ask you, or just make you aware of. One, that homicides are about 1/3 of all gun-related deaths in the US, and 70% of those are African-American males. In Washington state, 73% of all gun-related deaths are African-American males and females. That issue, we'd like for you just to comment on the disproportionate impact that gun violence has on certain families and certain communities, as well as recently there's been an uptick in, and of course you're part Japanese and part African-American, recent uptick in violence against Asian community members. So we would like for you just to give us a little of your wisdom on what strategies or what you are thinking about this disproportionate impact on Brown, Black, and Asian communities.
Sure, thanks, Winona. Let me sort of bifurcate the questions on Asian violence and the disproportionate effect on African Americans. So I firmly believe, as a person of Black descent, that when you look at our country and you look at 400 years of discrimination and the intentional destruction of the Black family, that this wasn't designed. You could look at what's known as the Willie Lynch letters, and you could look at what happened during the original sin of slavery, that to this day in 2022, we still see the remnants of that, of I think the conscious or subconscious behavioral norms in a community. And by that, I mean very specifically that the level of love and care and the lack of impulse control in terms of killing someone that may look like you, or having racist whites see the person as the enemy, all of these isms that still happen in our society, whether it's racist people not seeing someone that they care about in front of them, or African Americans not loving the person in front of them who may look like them, that I continue to believe that because of this country, and we're a very racialized country, that like disparities in education and employment and housing, that African Americans continue to suffer more. And if we look at our history, we have to be that much more intentional about protecting and coming up with polished solutions. And that's where the community-based organizations, the faith community comes in. That's where mentoring comes in. And so, for example, I'm going to convert all of our recreational centers and our playgrounds and our gym courts and all of these assets that we have in the city, such as our golf courses and our mortgage facilities, into mentoring, tutoring, counseling centers, such that a young person could realize how much potential they have. And I continue to think that if a person is quick to destroy another person or kill another person, or not realize the power they have from within, that it could be a wasted life. And so what my work is going to be is trying to uplift all communities and bring attention to the fact that we still sometimes think racially. I don't believe that if you see someone in the face of, if you see your own mother, your own father, your own brother, and your own sister in the face of the person you're about to pull a trigger, you will think twice or three times. It'd be much harder for you to pull that trigger. So we have untreated trauma here, and we have unresolved issues of racial conflict that we're dealing with, which segues into the Asian violence. The fact of the matter is, under our historical leader, Donald Trump, and I say historical leader because I think he'll go in the history books as one of the worst leaders this country has ever known, that he touched the soft underbelly in our country by blaming this COVID virus on Asians and tapping into the soft underbelly. That you may recall that this country has an historical negative treatment toward Asians to begin with. It began with many things, including the Chinese Exclusion Act and the executive order that imprisoned, incarcerated Japanese Americans during World War II. My mother was in a Minidoka camp herself, in a concentration camp herself as a child. We have a history of that, and what under the Trump movement, if you will, he tapped into that and said, this COVID situation, we're all wearing masks and we're afraid for our lives, blame it on those Asians. And we also know, because of the technology advances and the world order of commerce, with China being an emerging power, and some of the issues associated with that, that there's this fear that they are taking over. The Asians, if you look at their birth rates, their birth rate suggests that they are an emerging group, and people tap into that. So behind the anger, always is fear, and the fear is that we are losing out, and let's hate those people. So with these kinds of isms walking around, racism, we have to be extremely intentional to looking at people who may not look like what you see in the mirror every day. We have to be very intentional. We have to teach our young kids do not come out hating anyone. To be very intentional about loving people. And that's, I think, being biracial, I look at race issues quite differently. And I will focus as the mayor of this city to make sure we address our biases, our prejudices, and we learn to love one another. Because quite frankly, most forums I go, I don't see anyone that looks like me, very, very few people. So these issues are real, and unless we tackle them head on and be very intentional about eroding them, they will get the best of us, but I'm not gonna let that happen in Seattle.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have one question from the audience, and it says, how much authority does the mayor's office have to execute policy? Do you need the city council's approval for I'm assuming some of the projected things that you would like to see happen.
So yes, for the most part, there's a lot I could do by executive order, but a law and ordinance can only be passed by the city council. And that is exactly why you will see the city council, even those that sometimes take a different policy twist than me, you'll see them saying publicly very complimentary things about me or my administration. And that is because I look for win-wins. Every single council member, every single one are trying to say the exact same problems, trying to solve the exact same problems that I'm trying to solve. So what I do is I meet with them. How can I help you champion what you're trying to do? You're interested in re-election? What does this look like for you? How can I be of service? Because I do want to be allies. Now, this is a different approach than mayors have taken. Mayors fight with city councils publicly. You don't see me denigrating the city council, even if I disagree with their comments they've said about my administration, what I'm doing. I walk the talk, and so I need them to be a strong part of what we're trying to do, and I'm leading. Quite frankly, I don't let them lead me. I lead with them, not I don't lead them, I lead with them. So I do need their help. I let them know that. They also control the purse strings. I propose a budget and they approve it. But you're going to see some great things come out of 2022, 2023, because unlike many of my predecessors, not just my immediate one, many of them, they start playing tug of war with the council. You know, I one up them. And I'll tell you that the city loses when that happens. And I tell all my council members that you may think you got one up because the Harrell wanted to go this way. When I says the city hates that stuff. They want to see a functional ecosystem. You can have all the credit. I don't care. God has been too good to me to have to worry about credit at this point in my life. It's about the city. It's about the people. It's about safety. It's about love. It's about being the best we could. If we figure these answers out in Seattle, I will tell you this whole country will watch what we're doing. We got to stop playing small ball. And I tell the council, man, you're playing small ball in this little minute issue that we have the components to be the greatest city literally in this country, the components here. And if we don't seize that and we don't own it, then stop playing small ball. So you can say whatever you want. An example would be him cleaning up 4th Avenue. Well, he doesn't have social services press conference because it's dangerous out there right now. It's dangerous. I can't get a social worker there. I can't get a grandma out there when there's bullets flying everywhere. I wouldn't put them in harm's way. I have to clean up the sidewalks first. So yes, I need the city council, but if they're not on board, then they just have to get out the way. So it's as simple as that, because we are leading with them. And I keep saying that, leading with you. But this old paradigm, us versus them, that's passe, is what it is. It's passe.
Well, you know, Mayor Harrell, we can sense your commitment, your compassion. We thank you for the time that you spent this morning with us. We know that we are, this is a valuable conversation, so you made time and cleared your calendar for this. But most importantly, the next person up, we thank you for your vision of being the first mayor to create within your cabinet a space for a gun violence preventionist and liaison, and that is Miss Devitta Briscoe. So we will, again, if you can stay, you're welcome to stay, but we were told you had a hard stop, but we again appreciate what you have done. We appreciate hearing your passion for helping and your vision for a safer Seattle. And again, thank you on behalf of Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, in particular, all of us that want a better life for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. I do have to get off. Thank you so much. I look forward to being your partner.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye. Miss Devitta Briscoe, thank you so much for being with us today. It is an honor and a pleasure to invite you into the space with Grandmothers Against Gun Violence and with many facets of our community. We're touching a lot of people today, and we are always honored. We have almost 100 people, I believe, or at one point in time we did, on this call today. And that just goes to say that how invested our community is about this particular issue. Now, I'd just like to just briefly introduce you from what I know about you. but I would then welcome you to add on and to create the information that you feel best serves today's discussion. I wanted to definitely, first and foremost, thank you again for your time. And I just thanked our mayor for his vision in creating this space and centering gun violence prevention and safety, and violence interruption for all of us here in the city of Seattle. You know, I understand, and I know this from working with you, um, through your organization that you were director of, not this time. Also, connecting with you through moms, connecting with you through the Alliance, and connecting with you through Grandmothers Against Gun Violence. We are all forces that have been out here a long time. This didn't just happen. So for the mayor to appoint you to a specific office and create space for you was huge. Well, why? Our inquiring minds might want to know why. Why? Because not only do you walk the talk, but you actually have been, unfortunately, your family history has shown a devastation of having been impacted disproportionately by violence and gun violence. So as you come to this office and you bring your leadership skills from organizing the nonprofit, from being very successful in advocacy in various ways in our community, particularly in the Tacoma community, and now shifting more into the Seattle community. We welcome you today, and I would like to just first and foremost have you introduce yourself to us.
Making sure that my mic is off. Thank you. Thank you again. My name is Devitta Briscoe. I am the gun violence prevention liaison with the mayor's office in the city of Seattle. And this is the first cabinet level position that was created to address the epidemic of gun violence. And I'm so proud of this administration and Mayor Harrell for creating this position and his commitment to standing with families to address gun violence. I come to this work again, I am a grandmother. I know I don't look like it, but I am. I am a grandmother and a mother of 5, and I have been working in anti-violence spaces for a number of years, working in community spaces to address this issue for many, many years. I want to just thank Margie for that introduction where she was saying the 2 steps forward. And I think as a community, I wrote this in my op-ed that we're suffering from the gun violence fatigue, and where we are been so traumatized that we could be hopeless, And so I think that by creating this position, it's sending an alarm of hope, that we can turn the tide. And so again, I with my leading my introduction, so I've come to this space as no stranger to the trauma of gun violence myself, and I believe that that's why the mayor invited me into this position, is because he's not only saying that gun violence prevention is a priority, but he's also saying that he believes that community engagement with those who are most impacted will help drive better outcomes. And so not only did I lose my partner in 2001, who was murdered, in 2010, I lost my 17-year-old son who was shot. Thank you. And then in 2016, my brother was killed by the police. And so these are 3 things that have really pushed me, that last incident really pushed me into activism and advocacy. But even before that, I've worked with Pete Carroll on A Better Seattle. I started the McCaney Project in my son's memory. I've done a lot of work around to addressing urban violence, which Mayor Harrell was talking about earlier, about Black and brown young men and women who are being killed in our cities. So I have been pushing my hands to the tide with no recognition, just a concerned mother, a concerned parent like all of you, and just really wanting to see a reduction in the amount of shootings and homicides that we're seeing in our neighborhoods. And so I've been doing that for some time, and worked police accountability and police reform for a number of years, pushing Initiative 940 that would give us mandatory de-escalation training for officers, to reduce incidents of fatalities, police violence incidents. And so, and again, even as working in police reform, it wasn't to be anti-cop, but pro-community. And so we really wanted to make a city that was safer for both officers and members of the community who where there were fatal incidents. So I've worked for a number of years on police reform and trying to be bridging a gap between law enforcement and communities that are impacted. And so that's been my role for a number of years before coming on to this. And so, yeah, again, just always just a concerned community member, putting my hands to the plow where I'm needed, and have run into spaces with Grandmothers Against Gun Violence in the past. And we've been on a number of panels together, but I thank you for your advocacy and your work in our communities, and for your efforts towards curbing this epidemic. Oh, I can't hear you. I think you're on mute.
The radio host that doesn't take themselves off of mute, that's a strange one. Okay. I really, again, thank you for the engagement. I would believe Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, our organization led by our Vice President, Cherie Rowe Proctor, and some of our members, Sarah Dean and Debbie, and a lot of our members, we actually showed up hands-on to community passageways. And that's where we first met you and engaged with you, where we were actually working with Beverly Fletcher, actually at the time, set up the project with you. And we were able to work together as NIC, as grandmothers, working together for the best interest of the community. I really like that you mentioned you're not anti-cop, but you are pro-community. And I believe that there is a space for that. And I believe that grandmothers, we have a lot of grandmothers who have, as I do, people who are serving in the police department, in our families, in some ways. And again, there has always been that concern that we have respect for each other in communities, in our spaces, but that we don't end up losing lives because of some few people that may not be of the same accord as we are. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a very good space. In questions today we have for you, what will you do for the administration, and what are your specific job responsibilities?
First, let me say that I know that Mayor Harrell trusts my leadership in this area, and that together we have a shared commitment to violence reduction and a shared vision to ensure that Seattle is one of the safest and healthiest cities in the nation. And he talked about that, about, this beacon that Seattle can be for the rest of the country. And so I believe that he appointed me for that position, but I'm the liaison, so I'm the eyes and the ears of the community. I'm working directly with those who are impacted by this kind of violence, and I'm also helping to coordinate and drive community-based solutions. And this is like an overlapping focus. So I'm focused on solutions implementation, policy, community engagement, and external outreach. And again, this is like, gun violence, there's no one size fits all solution. It's a complicated issue. But what my job allows me to do is to support those community-based efforts that are necessary for preventing gun violence in the first place. So again, I'm the eyes and the ears of the community. I'm taking those concerns, and I often say that the taxpayers write my check, but the community is my boss. So I still feel like I have to respond to the community. I still have to respond to the needs in the community, and to those who have been ignored and deprioritized. Those communities, and we talked about the Asian community, we talked about all of those communities that have been deprioritized and ignored for so long and left for decades to fend for themselves. I think it's time for us to become allies with those communities and to come alongside them and fight for them. And so I believe that that's what this administration is saying. That is what Mayor Harrell is saying, is that we are going to become not just allies, but we're going to be the front runners. We're going to lead the way. And so, so anyway, that's what's in my wheelhouse of gun violence prevention.
That is very encouraging. And I was just recently on a panel, and one of our supporters of Grandmothers Against Gun Violence as well, and partners, there was a discussion about how the passing of this session's legislature, they passed the Community Reinvestment Act, and that was led by Jim Buchanan as well as Phil Petty and a host of other, including Winona Washington Equity Now Alliance. And that is actually going to give funds for you to work with those families more impacted by gun violence. Yes. And so investment in those families, you're going to get some help from the Washington State Legislature. So that's a bonus. And we're excited about the future of that as well. Also, you mentioned another question that we have was, what is driving gun violence in Seattle? What do you think? Why the uptick?
There are just a number of things that are going on, especially in our 18 to 26-year-old population, which is where we're seeing a spike in the highest rates of gun violence, and especially amongst our Black and Brown young men. Especially, it's the leading cause of death for Black boys and men. And we've seen a 40% increase in our shots fired, which is record high. Some of the things that we've seen with our young people is of course, an effect of COVID, where young people are no longer in those structured environments and programs that were closed as due to COVID. Now they're more visible and they're out in public spaces more often. So that is one of the reasons that have drove gun violence amongst our younger population. We're also seeing an uptick in our 30 to 39-year-old population, and that is due to we've seen our marijuana places that have been attacked for robberies, and so marijuana dispensaries have been targeted for robberies. There's also been an uptick in the 30 to 39-year-old population, which are DV related, domestic violence related issues, incidents. There's also been an increase in shootings in homeless encampments, which we've seen a spike there. There has been a spike in road rage incidents. And I think it's because people are desperate. There's so much economic uncertainty. There's a lot of unaddressed mental health issues. There are just substance abuse issues. All of these things contribute. So that's why I'm kind of saying there's no one thing to point to. There's just a number of things that are undergirding what we're seeing as a spike. And hopefully we'll see that taper down. But right now, those are some of the main causes that we're looking at right now.
Okay, then in honor and deference to our audience who took time out to come and listen to this conversation, I have a couple questions we're going to be able to get to. There's 7. We're going to be able to get to at least 3 of them, I hope. One is from Dr. Tracy Hilliard, a member of Links organization with First Lady Harrell and myself. She says, thank you, Ms. Winona, Mayor Harrell, and Ms. Briscoe for your leadership and engaging with us in the community. What do you hope will be key indicators of success as the vision of the Safe City moves forward? So what are the indicators that you feel are, when will you know you've reached some success?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one thing, what the mayor talked about is this one Seattle. And I think we're not going to be able to see progress until we could come together on how we think that it needs to be addressed. On one side, we have blame shifting. On another side, we have people who don't want to cooperate with law enforcement at all. I think this one Seattle of coming together and saying we need both community and enforcement-based solutions. And once we can do that, once we can get us past the polarized politics, get us past all of that, and then once we can come together, because that is when we're going to see progress, is when we can push for those solutions that will drive both community and enforcement-based approaches. We have to have both. We cannot have one approach that's alone. Both approaches need to come together. I think that is the most, that's when I'll see progress. I'd also like to see our faith leaders more engaged in violence reduction, doing a lot more to reclaim our city spaces where homicides occur, leading roundtable discussions, also, driving regional solutions, our city aligning with our county efforts, also with our state partners. So there are just a number of things that I would love to see, and where I think and a decrease in shootings and homicides. A realistic number that I've looked at around the country is a 10% reduction. And I know that doesn't seem like a big number for a lot of people, but for an entire city, a 10% reduction in the first year or within some certain amount of time is huge progress. So anyway, that was, if that kind of answered the question.
Yeah, that did answer the question, but I want to put you on the hot spot just one moment here, just because that's what I do when I'm in.
Right.
What have you done in the first month? What has been done?
In the first month, we've been, number one, the mayor has joined the Mayors Against Illegal Guns, which is a national coalition of former and current mayors across the country that are trying to address gun violence in their communities in America. We have also worked on alliance with the King County Regional Peacekeepers Collective, and aligning our city efforts with our county efforts. Again, just my position has been created. And again, we know that this is going to take time for us to, because it's not going to be solved overnight. So we're going to continue to build. He's also joined a roundtable discussion with Dow Constantine to work to collaborate on a more regional approach. We've been supporting and organizing with mothers and families that have been directly impacted by gun violence. And we're also working on a school outreach. As kids are coming back to school, we've noticed an uptick in a lot of violence of young people who are coming to and from school. And so we are working on increasing community power to provide school safety services for our students who are mostly impacted by gun violence. So that's just and again, it's only been 10 weeks. So those are just some of the things that we're working on right now.
Wonderful. And I thank you for being willing to respond to that question, the immediacy of that question. And from Kim in Seattle, Kim says, can you please comment on how you see the opportunities to act on some specific ways you will be intentional in your strategy to discern between income disparity and systematic legal and economic harm? So looking at the people that are most disproportionately shut out of the system is what I think we're driving at here. And what does that mean for them? We talked a little bit about the Community Reinvestment Act helping, but what is the city planning to do to kind of bridge the gap between the haves, the have-nots, and the people that are just out there, the homeless, other people that are just out there left right now during the pandemic impact.
Yeah, there's a more broader public safety question. It seems like, in addressing homelessness is another, not in my wheelhouse, but that's for Deputy
No,
Mayor
we were just
Tiffany.
talking about
The economic.
Yeah, and the economic issues, and the mayor mentioned that an uptick in violence in the homeless camps, so, and that's, again, not in your wheelhouse, but what is in your wheelhouse is, for the most immediate things, what's next for you? Let's put it that way. What's next in your vision?
I think, again, we want to take a comprehensive, holistic approach. We want something that's beyond just police, and an enforcement-based approach. We want to be able to have economic development and investment, social services, and true community engagement. And we want to take it, neighborhood by neighborhood. I think the first thing is we have to stabilize each area. We have our community safety hubs that are in West Seattle. We have some community safety hubs in certain areas, but we don't have one in the Chinese International District. We don't have one that's downtown. We also are not addressing another older population. Most of our gun violence prevention efforts are towards young people between the ages of 18 and 24. But we don't have anything right now that's addressing the 30 to 39-year-old population. And so, again, and investments in our economic development in these areas, but we can't provide services, we can't do any of those other things until we first stabilize the neighborhoods, and we have to take each neighborhood one by one. And so, sorry. I see another.
We're gonna thank you so much for spending the time with us today. We look forward to engaging and seeing how grandmothers can help you with your vision. Our co-chair Maggie Carr asked, how will there be a chance for creating a gun violence prevention commission in Seattle? All those things we will continue to work with you on in the future. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. We want to go out with Dee Daniels. Dee Daniels is a local artist, a friend of mine's, and also a friend of the community. She actually dedicated a song to the late Congressman John Lewis, and we think this will represent the closure of this discussion. So if you have a little bit of time just to listen to this song, it's on YouTube. Again, thank you so much, Ms. Devitta Briscoe. And thank you, Dr. Margie Hauge. And thank you, all of our audience today, for your attentiveness. And we're out in this together. We can win it together. Thank you so much.
While my time here has now come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter. Of the great American story, when you used your power to make a difference in our society. Now it's your turn to let freedom breathe. Come together, all people of the world, in the name of love. Yes, it's your turn to let freedom together. Lift up one another. Now it's your turn to let freedom ring.
We all live in the same house, and it doesn't matter whether we are black or white, Latino, Asian American, or Native American. It doesn't matter whether we're straight or gay. We are one people, we are one family. We all live in the same house. Be bold, be courageous, stand up, speak out, and find a way to create the beloved community, the beloved world, a world of peace, a world that recognizes the dignity of all humankind.
So I say to you, walk with the